Today we're making this tea cozy, and all it is a couple of layers of fabric with some batting on the inside. And what it does, it keeps the liquid on the inside warm until you're ready to consume the rest of it. It's not going to keep 24 hours, but within a sitting it should keep your liquids on the inside warm. This one was made a couple of days ago. It's actually made of quilting fabric on the outside, on the inside, and then it has a band of bias tape here around the bottom, and you just keep it on your teapot, so when you are able to drink your tea, it should still stay warm. So let's get started. For this project, you need your teapot that you're going to measure. You can use any teapot because you only need 2 measurements. So you need the measurements that go the height, so from the bottom to the top, or to the highest point of the teapot, and then around. So you need your teapot. Then you need your fabric. So what I'm using is cotton fabric. It's a cotton quilting fabric purchased at Joann's before Joann's decided to kick the bucket. So this is just some pretty bee fabric I have. I have pre-washed this because if you happen to wash your cozy after you've made it and you haven't washed your fabric, everything will shrink and it will not fit. So I have, on this one that we're going to make, I have 1 fabric for the outside, 1 fabric for the inside, and then I could use the same fabrics to do the binding across the bottom, but this is actually a jelly roll. I got a jelly roll all in black, and I've sewn them all together, so it's just one long big thing of bias tape at this point, and that's what we're going to use for the bottom. Now for the inside, as you can see here, this is kind of fluffy. I don't know if you can tell here very well, but it's thick and it's floofy on the inside. I used a very thick batting on this one. As a matter of fact, for this particular cozy, I used this very thick, fluffy batting that I got at the local craft store. It's like very thick and very floofy. It's also very it's made out of polyester. Because this is so thick, it's a little more difficult to sew. Well, I take that back. It's not difficult to sew. It's just a little, it gets in the way. The extra fluffiness just gets in the way. But there are other things that you can use. So you can, this is what you have, use this. If you have this is the very thin cotton batting. You could double up or just keep it as one layer. You can double up layer, but see how thin it is compared to this one. So with it being so thin, it is going to affect your cozy a little differently, meaning it's going to be a little thinner. It should still fit the same, but it'll be a little thinner. Then I also have this. This is actually, it's 2-sided fusible fleece. So I'm going to either use this, so you can iron it to each side, but it's still very thin, just like the cotton batting I have here. It's very thin, it's fleece, and it's an interfacing, so it adds body to your fabric, but it should also be insulating as well. So I'm going to use this or this. I haven't decided what I'm going to use yet. I think I have some smaller. I think I'm going to use the cotton batting just because I have some scraps that I think will fit this project. I don't want to cut into my big piece of batting here because I do plan to do some quilting later. But use what you have. You can also use an old bath towel or an old kitchen towel. You just want something to be in the middle to be able to insulate the heat for your teapot. So I'm going to pop that on there, and we're going to set this aside. I'm going to take all this and set this aside, and I'll come back with you in just a minute. Okay, so here's my cotton batting. I'm going to use this, pop those back in there in my basket of scraps. So once again, cotton batting, fabric for your inside, your outside, and a bias tape, or you can use the same fabrics. Set that aside. And then you need paper for your pattern making, which I have not cut off yet, so let me go do that. Now the pattern paper that I use is not actually pattern paper. It is actually the paper that painters use to walk on when they are painting your house, to cover the floors and things. I have found this big roll. You can see it right here. This big roll right here from Home Depot. And it has a lot to it. I don't recall how much it was. It was less than $20 when I purchased this one. And this is actually my second roll. I've gone through my first one, but I've had them for years. So this has helped me a lot. So I just cut off a piece. Let me put this one back. If you do not have this type of paper, you are certainly welcome to use anything like wrapping paper. Wrapping paper is thick enough and malleable enough so that you can create your pattern on it. I would just warn you to be careful because it does tear easily. Even when you're cutting, you know, it gives those little tears that you're trying to cut, especially if you're trying to cut quickly, and it drives me crazy. So I don't particularly like using it, but I will use it. So if you need this instead, you don't have to run out to the store to get this stuff. Use your wrapping paper. So because I have a curl here, I'm going to have to uncurl it. So what I'm doing is to prevent it from curling in the opposite direction. I rolled it in the opposite direction of the curl, and I'm squeezing. I'm doing a little bitty squeezes as I'm going up and down. You can see some of my marks. And there we go. And that should work. So now I'm going to take my ruler, and I am about to draw out my pattern with my measurements. So first I need to do my measurements. Here I am trying to get ahead of myself. So what I'm going to do with this measuring tape is I'm going to measure around the teapot. So you want to do the widest area around the handle and around the spout. Let's see. When I measured it the first time, I got 17. So if you measured this way, there you go. I got 17, and then, so I need to write that down. So I'm going to go around 17 inches, and then if I measure up to the top, I got 6 inches. So my height, 6 inches. Now that I have the measurements from the top and around the teapot, I am going to then add a ease. You want to easily be able to lift it on and off of your pot. So this is actually bigger than the teapot itself. So there's room for movement. So you can see I can squeeze and pinch. The handle's right here, and the top of the spout is right here. And I'm pinching about an inch right here. So I have room, I have ease of movement here. And then from the top, so I have about an inch here at the top because my fingers are hitting the lid. So I want to add some extra room in here so that we have ease of movement, so we can easily pull the cozy on and off. Now that we have the actual measurements of the teapot, so we said that the teapot was going to be around the teapot was 17 inches. We have to divide that in half, which in half would give us 8.5 inches. Now, the height of the teapot, the height was 6 inches. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys something real quick. So here is a piece of paper, the actual size of the teapot, 8.5 inches by 6 inches. This is one size. So if I compared it to the teapot itself, it's going to be too small. You see how small? So if I decided to sew it up, it's not going to fit. It won't be able to fit over the teapot. The teapot will be too big. So we have to add extra room around the sides, definitely, and maybe the top. So this is how we're going to add what's called ease. Ease is that extra room that allows you to put your teapot cozy on and off your teapot, just like this, because it's not stuck. It's not so tight that you can't pull it off, and it fits perfectly. Okay, so that's what ease is. Ease is giving you that room for movement. In clothes, it's that extra little room in your shirts and your pants that allow you to move. So for our teapot, this is what we're going to add. So this is our actual size of our teapot, and I have my notes over here on the side. So what we're going to do, we are going to take our 8.5 and we're going to add our ease for room around the teapot. So we're going to add for our ease 1.5 inches. Plus,
we need to add a seam allowance. So the seam allowance is where we're actually going to sew. It's that little bit of extra fabric that allows you to sew your pieces together. So our seam allowance is going to be a 1/2 inch. So 8.5 plus 1.5, so that's 8, 9, 10 inches plus a 1/2 inch. So our total size of our teapot is 10.5 inches. Now for our height, because we're taking this measurement around the teapot, which is the most important one, the measurement for our height, we don't have to change too much. All we're going to do is add 1 inch, which gives us 7 inches. So we now need to draw out a rectangle that's, instead of 8.5 by 6, it needs to be 10.5 by 7. So let's go ahead and do that. This line is my baseline. I'm going to be drawing everything off of this line. So no matter how crooked my paper is, this is the line that I'm going to be measuring against to make sure that it's correct, so that it's aligned. So I'm just going to make a mark here. Bam. So 10.5 inches. Mark 10.5 inches right there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to measure right here. Make a mark right, make a mark right there, 10.5, and one over here as well. And so that is our width. So this is how wide it's going to be. And remember, we are measuring our pattern for one side because we're going to cut out 2 of these. And then we need to do our height. So our height is 7 inches. So I'm going to measure right here at these marks, 7 inches. Okay, come over here to this one, 7 inches. Okay, so there you go. We'll just draw that right there. And this is the rectangle that should be the correct size. So what I'm going to do is mark it. Teapot Cozy. And I'm going to put 10.5 by 7 inches. So that way we know. I'm going to cut this out real quick. And let's see, we'll do a faux test fit and see if it's correct. Okay, so here's my pattern. And I'm going to keep my scribbles for future use, just in case I need to save this. If I don't remember, if I've forgotten, I can take all this and transfer it onto my pattern piece later. But for right now, I'm just going to set it aside. So this is the pattern. We're going to still make some adjustments, but do a quick fit. We're going to take our teapot and we're going to line it up. Okay, now you see the difference that we had from the first one when we were just doing measurements. You have extra room on this side. You have extra room on this side. This includes a seam allowance, so there's going to be a little extra room, which will allow us to be able to put this on and off our teapot. So now that we have all the extra room on the sides and on the top, so right now we need to think about our shape. Now the shape that I had originally, I will just whip this out. The shape I had originally had these 2 curves right here. And everything that I learned about teapot cozies, you kind of wanted to go with the shape, which is why I got this shape. But the more I look at it, the more I'm like, I don't know. I think I want to do a little more curve to my teapot cozy. So this one that we're going to make, I'm going to curve it a little more. So now I got to figure out what type of curve I want. I said I wanted a bigger curve, a stronger curve, right? So I'm going to fold this in half. I'm going to figure out how much of a curve do I want. So I want to start here at the center and draw a curved line out, but not so. I think I want to do it more like this line right here. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do it more like this. Since I don't have any transfer paper underneath, I don't have any way like a carbon copy. So if I draw it out to show up on the other side, so I'm going to use just a pin. I'm just going to use a pin and poke some holes. I'm going to poke this hole just some holes so that it goes all the way through. And these holes will act as a guide for me. Wait a minute, do I want to do this way? Okay. So I can see the holes here. You're not going to be able to see them on camera. I can see the holes here, which will then allow me to do the curve that I want. There we go. And that's how I was able to transfer the curve that I wanted here to my new pattern. So now when I cut this out, I'm going to cut out just a smidge outside. So I'm going to cut this out like, so I want this to be my seam line right here. So I'm going to cut about 1/4 of an inch out. So this is my cut line, and this should be my seam line. So I'm going to cut this out right now. And then here's our new pattern. So it gives me a better curve. I can go back and clean that up some. It's kind of a square, kind of pointy right here, and it's kind of pointy right here. So I'm going to go and trim them up just a little bit, give it a little more curve. There you go. And right there. Okay, that looks much better. Now, one of the things that I want to adjust on this pattern, which I did after I sewed everything up, you see how it has this curve right here at the bottom? That's because when you have the teapot cozy on, there's a gap right here, so it doesn't sit completely on the ground. The sides touch the table, but there's a gap here in the front and the back that doesn't allow the teapot cozy to sit directly on. So to remedy that, we're going to take however much the gap is here, which is about 1/2 inch to 1/4 of an inch. I think I might do 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to take that gap and remove it here at the sides. So that means that this was straight across. So that means I need to trim the sides up just a smidge. This is where my original bottom was. And I trimmed up the sides just a smidge. So I'm going to do that on the new one. So I'm going to fold that in half again. And from that middle fold, I'm going to measure up. I said 1/4 of an inch. Let's see. This would be 1/4 of an inch. Now, this one I did 1/2 an inch on, but I haven't sewn anything from this pattern again, knowing that. So I think, I'm trying to decide, do I want, how much of a gap would that be? How much is it? Definitely 1/2 inch. We're going to go 1/2 inch. So I'm going to mark 1/2 inch here. And from this mark to my center right here, I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to cut this line out, and that should correct the gap here. So let's find out. Let's do our sewing up, and because even if this is wrong and it doesn't fit like it's supposed to on the bottom, if you have a gap here, it still works. I mean, still use it. It still works. And then you can always play with your pattern later to try to correct that. So I'm going to trim that off. I'm going to round it out just a little bit, just a smidge. Okay. Ooh, maybe I shouldn't have rounded. That looks awful. Yeah, it is what it is. So by the time I get everything cut out and put together, it won't look like the pattern piece, and it should look better. All right, so old pattern, I'm going to stick aside. New pattern, this is our new pattern with, and I'm going to put my notes here. So it's 5 by 7, or 10.5 by 7, and I'm going to put down here that I trimmed 1/2 inch. Okay, so So that's just a mark for me to let me know that I trimmed from a 1/2 inch from here to the center. Okay, so now it's time to cut out our fabric. So we're gonna put the things away that we don't need at the moment. Our rulers are gonna be put away. Paper, scissors are gonna be put away. Pencils are gonna be put away. Measuring tapes. Everything that's just gonna get in the way, I'm going to put away. Okay, so now we're gonna cut out our fabric. Bias tape can be set aside. And what you do need, you need to cut out two, where'd my Sharpie go? So this is what you need. You need 2 pieces of your outside fabric, 2 pieces of your inside fabric, and then 2 pieces of batting. Whatever you choose for your batting, whether it's fluffy polyester batting, cotton batting, old towels, whatever your choice is. You just need 2 pieces of the outside, 2 pieces of the inside, and then 2 pieces of batting. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all that out. Okay, there we go. Now we got everything. All right, so we have our outside fabric. So this is going to be my outsides, my insides, and the batting. Now, I need you guys to pay particular attention to how I'm going to put this all together, because I'm going to stack it all up together in one stack, and then we're going to do one seam around here, and then we'll do our bottoms. Okay, with that in mind, we're going to stack it like this. We're going to put our insides together this way. So right sides together meaning the printed side or the pretty side will be facing each other. So right sides together. And then we're going to put our batting. One layer is going to go on top. Then we're going to flip it over, and one layer is going to go here. Okay, it's like we're building it from the outside in. Okay, just like this. So this is going to be the inside. So our batting. So it's batting, lining, lining, batting. For the outside, that's going to be a little different. We're going to take these. We're going to put our right sides together here. And we're going to take this and put it on top. Lining up everything as best you can, okay? So, because this is cotton batting, it's sticky, kind of like a Velcro, so your fabric should stick to it with no problem. Okay, so you guys with me so far? So we're gonna do batting, inside fabric, right sides together with another inside fabric, batting, outside fabric, insides, right sides together, the other outside fabric. So what I want to be able to do is we're going to stitch 1/4 inch all the way around here. And when we're done, I want to be able to turn it to the other side. So I'm going to pin it here just so that you can see. Well, that pin doesn't want to pin. So once that's all stitched, I want to be able to take it and to flip it inside out so that it then looks like this. With all our stitching on the inside, like right here. So all our stitching would be on the inside, and then we still have the ability for our teapot to go inside here. But instead of stitching everything into like 2 pieces, because what you would do then is you would put an outside fabric here, and you would stitch this, and then you would stitch this, and then you would put them together and stitch them all together. This ends up allowing you to keep the edges all covered up, so when you look on the inside of the tea cozy, here I'll flip it inside out, you don't have any raw edges. Everything is nice and trim and kept inside. So see, it looks just as nice on the inside as it does the outside. And that's what I want. And in order to do that, you got to make the weird sandwich. Okay? Here I'm going to show you how to make the loop for the top of your pot cozy. You're going to need a scrap piece of fabric about 2 inches wide and about 3, 4, 5 inches long. Fold your scrap in half lengthwise and finger press the fold. Open it up and then take the edge and fold it towards the inside, toward the fold that you just creased. Finger press again. And do the same for the other side. Folding everything together and finger pressing all the folds. Finger press everything down and then take this piece to your sewing machine and sew that gap closed. As you can see here in that smaller piece. Then you want to take your sewn piece and you want to fold it into a loop. A loop that lays flat. Once you have the shape you want and the size that you want, sew across the bottom and place the loop in between the outside pieces of the fabric with the loop pointing towards the inside. So when you flip it out, the loop will pop out on top. And then sew your seam as normal. And I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. Now when I pin this together, I'm going to pin this in a particular way. I'm going to take my pin, I'm going to pin it perpendicular to my edges, just like this. And what this does, because when I put it in my sewing machine, I'm going to put it in like this. I'm going to stitch in this way. So instead of pulling pins this way, it's easier to pull them this way. We're going to flip it out and we're going to give it a test fit. And then we're going to flip it inside out again and trim our edges. Let me show you what I'm doing. Let me explain this to you. I'm going to separate the outside and I'm going to flip here. So that way everything else is on the inside. So that bulkiness that's here on the edges, we're going to trim that down in just a minute. And we're going to take it and the inside fabric we're going to pull apart and we're just going to do a test fit on our pot.
Ta-da! It fits perfectly. You can slide it on and off with no problems, and it's a perfect fit. You have about an inch from here's the spout, and we have about an inch from the handle. This is exactly what we want. So now I'm going to take this, flip that back to the side, and we're going to flip it back out.
So that whichever one that we flipped, no, I think it was the other one. Let's see, the one with the seam allowance. Oh, it's the other side. Okay. So you want to flip that with the one that has the edges. You see the edges in there? So the one that has the edges, we'll flip this back out that way. Because what we want to do, we want to clean this up some. We want to trim it so that it won't be so big and bulky on the cozy once we're done with it. So what I'm going to do is going to take some scissors and I'm just going to trim close. Normally at the curves you would make snips. You would clip out triangles or make snips to allow the curve to fit properly. But if we just trim close to the seam, well, okay, not through the seam. We don't want to cut the stitching. We just want to trim close to it. And that's what I'm going to do here. So we trimmed close to the seam. We didn't trim through the seam, we just trimmed close to it. And that for this project, that means we don't have to make any snips, and we'll flip it right back out again. I'm going to pop open the inside, work your hands through it, make sure everything's laying flat and lovely. So we're going to take our bias tape, or our fabric. So whatever fabric scraps you have, whatever it is that you want to use, we're going to take it and we're going to have about twice the width. I'm just going to measure it out. I'm not going to use a measuring tape. Let's see. So we're going to have some extra, and then so about this much. And what this does is it gives us a little extra room to play if we need to take in for account for that angle. So now I'm just going to cut this off. Where's that end? Right there. What the? Oh, my scissors. Being all wonky. Okay, throw that back in my basket of scraps. And we're going to pin this to the bottom edge. So if you've never done bias tape before, all we're going to do is we're going to pin it here, then we're going to sew, and we're going to fold the rest of the fabric to the inside so it encloses that cut edge and gives us a pretty end to this. So see here, so I sewed this to the outside, folded it to the inside, and then for me, I did hand stitching here on the inside. What we're going to do now, and I'm going to start here on a side, like that. I'm going to take my, and I'm just going to pin the tape in place. Now, this bias tape is, where's my, here, my ruler is 2.5 inches wide, because this is from a jelly roll and not something that I cut on my own. So if I was to cut it on my own, I would probably do like 2 inches, and it would give me a smaller width here. But I'm using what I got, 2.5 inches it is, and I'm just going to pin it all the way around. Yeah, let's make sure you don't accidentally pin up the inside without meaning to. Okay, now that I've got that pinned all the way around, because I have my 2 loose edges right here, I'm just going to lay them together and figure out where I need to sew down. So I'm just going to sew straight down. So I want them as close together as possible here. See, I'm pinching my fingers right here. So right here where my pinch is where I want my seam at. So I'm going to pull it apart, make a mark, and then I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew straight here in between these 2 pins. So in between those 2 pins, that's where I made my mark. I'm just going to sew straight down. Then we'll trim this off and then sew around the rest. So hold on a second, I'll be right back. Straight where my mark is, you can see my stitching kind of sort of. And I'm just going to trim here, leaving an edge so that, leaving a little seam allowance. And then I'm going to lay that flat, pin that in place. Now, I'm going to take this back to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew about 1/2 inch all the way around from the edge. I'm going to go get that done and I'll be right back. As we sew the bias tape onto your tea cozy, you just need to remember to take your time and to go slow. If you end up getting wrinkles, that is perfectly okay. If this is your very first sewing project, you're probably going to get wrinkles, and it's okay. No one knows about your mistakes except for you. Now, if you want to tell everybody between the blue sky and the green earth about the mistakes that you made for your project, you go ahead and do that. But you don't have to tell anybody. And to be honest, most people aren't even going to know that you made mistakes unless you point it out to them. So if this is your first project, you take your time, and if you make a mistake, it's perfectly okay. But if you show it off to anybody, I bet you $1 to a donut that no one's even going to notice. So now you can see we have sewn all the way around the edge here. All right, so I'm going to flip this inside out at this point. Okay, now that I got this flipped out, we're going to roll the bias tape over the edge and then fold it. We're enclosing the cut edge of your project into this fabric here. So we're going to fold it over, and then we're going to fold it again and just tuck that in just like this. Okay, so we're going to do this again. I flipped it inside out. Here's our tape. Remember, we're enclosing this raw edge right here within this fabric. So we're just going to fold our fabric up, and we're going to turn this about a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, whatever you're comfortable with. We're going to just flip it just like that. Quilting cotton, it's easy to press and have it keep its shape. So we're just going to do that, and then we're going to pin it in place just like this, and we're going to do this all the way around. And don't be afraid to manipulate your fabric. Your fabric's not stiff. It's not going to break. It's malleable, it's soft, it's flexible. So if you need to squish your project down so that you have stuff that's out of the way so you can do what you need to do, it's okay. Okay, so now I've got it pinned all the way around. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and I'm going to do what is called a stitch in the ditch. And a stitch in the ditch is almost like an invisible type stitch that will allow me to hide the stitching of the bias tape. Ow, ooh, watch out for those pins, they'll get you. So on my machine, I'm going to slide it on my machine, and in this spot right here, this you can see the stitch right here between the two fabrics, I'm going to put my needle in here and stitch in that section. But that also means if I do that, on the opposite side, I have to have fabric that overlaps the stitching. So this line of stitching right here, I'm going to be stitching on top of that on this side. So that means the fabric here has to go over it, because when I do my sewing, it's going to capture that fabric right here. So I'm going to go in, make sure all my fabric is over that sewing line, over that, make sure it's all above. So when I stitch here, it'll capture the fabric here. Okay, I'm going to go get that done and I'll be right back. So I'm taking my time. I'm making sure that the needle goes in between the two different fabrics. It's okay if your fabric gets crazy and you are not able to, if you have 1 or 2 stitches off, that's okay. But just take it slow and steady and watch out for pins. Remove the pins before you sew over them. You do not want to sew over your pins, because if the needle hits the pin, then the repercussions could be that it messes up the timing inside your machine, and you don't want to do that. The timing is what allows the needle to grab the thread from the bobbin and bring it back up without hitting the casing. So if it ends up hitting the casing and making that type of noise, then you know your timing is off. And it's probably because you ran over a needle, is the more obvious way. But you can also knock your timing off other ways by just knocking your machine and such. Okay, so here we go. Here's the final tea cozy. It is done, but I'm going to show you my stitching real quick so that you can see what I'm talking about when I was talking about folding it up. So we went through it, we sewed the outside, folded the fabric over to the inside, flipped it inside out so it's easier to sew. We sewed here, capturing the fabric on the other side. So I'm going to bring you in a little more. You can see where we caught the stitching of the fabric on the other side. Now I like to go through and double check that it caught everything. See, that was close. That caught the edge. I got a wrinkle in this one. Let's see what else I got. So it's one. Even though I went slow, that's where I started and stopped. Mostly. If I did it by hand, I wouldn't have had that wrinkle. I think that's the only one.
Cool. So let's see how it works. Does it fit the pot? So I'm going to take that off. Oop. Here's the pot. Pull this up anyway so you can see. Pot, and ta-da! It fits on. Now I will say I made a mistake with this one. The adjustments we made to the bottom, so now it sits mostly flat. All on the bottom. I probably could have taken in a little more, but that's okay. It sits mostly flat. The only thing I forgot is this, the little handle. I mean, you can pinch the top, that's not a problem. I mean, you got plenty of room here. So right here is where the top of the teapot is. But this is cute. Maybe you can hang it up on a wall or just use it to take on and off, but we forgot it. So the next one I make, I will record that little section and show you how to do this. But our original is all done, super cute, and I will be making another one just to show you that one. And I hope you enjoyed it.